Good day, and thank you to all of you who's joined us. My name is Heinrich Saayman. I'm the CEO of HoneyBadger Technologies, and together with Michael Benikos, the MD of Assa Abloy Solutions Australia, and Brendon Granger, the Chief Experience Officer for Technology for Hotels, we would just like to welcome you to this webinar. And we are roughly going to be spending the next 45 minutes to highlight how some of the major vendors in the hospitality space are joining forces to increase your ROI. And this is simply done by integrating existing technology solutions that will automate cost savings without any physical intervention or additional changes needed in some instances. The main topics we'll cover today is integration, guest experience, touchless technology, energy management, and then also retaining dollars in your bank account. Some quick housekeeping items. All mics have been muted. You can type questions in the chat sections, and depending on the time allowed at the end of the webinar, we will answer as many of them as possible. The recorded webinar can also be made available offline, and private information sessions can be scheduled post the event if there is more information required. In our current operating environment, a lot of the focus has shifted to a more touchless and interactive product offering. This has limited the human interaction to an extent and have paved the way for greater integration between vendors. These integrations we only see will escalate and grow in the future as the tech demand grows inside of our industry. We ourselves have chosen to enhance our offering by adding more features to our existing mobile applications, such as TV control from your mobile device upon checking in by simply scanning a QR code which is displayed on the TV with a wake on LAN command. This limits the need for you to handle the remote control in room, and you will now be able to change channels, control the volume, and even switch on the TV or from your mobile device. Existing items like folio review and checkout, hotel directory, in-room dining, health and fitness on demand, and guest requests can now be viewed directly on your mobile device. Our API also can be integrated into your property branded apps as needed. These feature-rich sets are still accessible on the TV via the digital compendium and offers flexibility for the guest choice of platform to use. Integration with vendors can be also included for the deployment of in-room tablets into this technology set. As we all know, streaming is still the fastest growing platform globally, and our direct partnership with Google has enabled us to currently have over 300,000 rooms deployed globally in just under 4 years. And we've seen a similar growth in other vendors in this sector in the global market. Voted the #1 global solution for choice by hotels, the ROI can be delivered up to 3 times faster versus the traditional subscription-based channel models. Cord cutting is a big reality, and justifying spending on these older technology solutions are really being questioned by a lot of the property owners at this day and age. Your guests have all the content ready on their device and they travel with it. We are no longer in a position where we can dictate what they should be consuming. With over 2,000 apps available, which allows the freedom of choice of what to view on the latest big screen, one in your hotel room, they will choose and view what they want to manage. No user details are needed. Don't have to type in your name, don't have to type in your password, hence no security concerns over most of the systems that's approved by the major brands. Start your show at home and then finish it in your hotel suite. We also have rich data sets available monthly that you can track bandwidth, and we'll even tell you how good your Wi-Fi coverage is in the room by using the Chromecast device installed in every room. Real-time data is available for network management and support. We will even deal with your guests directly to ensure that they're not screaming at you, but actually streaming. Real-time integrations with companies like Assa, Abloy, and Telconet and others have proven to be very successful in delivering additional cost savings by combining APIs to further control the in-room devices. They've got your HVAC covered. They can switch it on, they can switch it off, and control the power monitoring with that. So what is next? What's happening in the future? For you to run a TV in a hotel room can cost up to 57 cents per hour. Imagine if you can turn them all off for an hour a day. Get out your calculator, type your rooms in, times that, and work out some of the numbers or crunch it for yourselves. We have the data received from the APIs supplied by Telconet and Assa Abloy to determine the occupancy of the room. And by doing that, we are actually able to activate or turn off devices depending on the status received. This includes the TV, the lights, even the bar fridge, all dependent on the hardware set that was deployed in the specific property. This is why it's very important to understand the technology stack available when deciding on implementing or upgrading solutions, and also the level of integration that each of these different solutions offer. Some nerdy statistics that I have for you is in deployed properties, we've seen on average 15% unoccupied rooms leave the television on. We recorded on average 300 TV off events per 24-hour session, and that equates to roughly about $170 per day in savings. And no, there's no negative impact to the guest because we can determine via the API integration when they enter the room, and we can start that room up exactly in the state that it was left when the guest exited. TV will be on, the lights will be in the same set, the bar fridge will be running, and the blinds could be open or closed depending on what status they were left. Further to that, Alexa and Google Assistant integrations are also increasing in demand in the region, but we are nowhere close what we see in the US and some of the other countries for this technology to grow. I do believe it will grow in the region, but there's a few tweaks and twerks that needs to be done to make it work 100%. We also know how hard it is to get up out of our bed at night when we need to turn the aircon off. And not to mention finding that light switch in the room that we don't know where that mysterious light works from. Well, with the integration features that is being offered by vendors, you can now be able to turn off the TV and turn off that light directly from your mobile device or by using the TV remote in the room. So snuggle up, good night, and sleep tight. Consultants and designers can easily highlight these subtle changes that will turn a CapEx saving into a permanent savings option. It might be as simple as just making the correct choice of vendors. They will then take care of these integrations and also deliver the ongoing support in the spaces where they coexist. By not asking the right questions up front, You will install systems that perform to the required specifications, but with no integration, they cannot deliver the ongoing ROI savings that you will be missing out. Ask the correct questions and get your consultant to evaluate not just the immediate savings, and you will see the money staying in your bank account. Thanks for your time. Michael is up next, so I will now hand over to Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Heinrich. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. So my part, I'm just going to take you through some a few different areas of potential savings, and also ways that you can either increase your own revenue. And there's from a labour savings or an energy savings. So firstly, I'd start on mobile apps. So the background about mobile apps, there's been a lot of talk about it recently. But I mean, there's a few statistics why mobile apps are becoming more prevalent. So I mean, pretty much most of the income coming from in the hospitality is from millennials, with 50% of the guests of these days are millennials. So they're used to using mobile phones. They're used to using these things. And 81% of research travel destinations by mobile device. And as you can see from the stats there, the 74% use mobile devices to compare travel prices, and 74% would even check in with a mobile device if available. And then 70, even a bit less, but still 70% would use a mobile key if available, just from the convenience point of view. So it's all sort of going down that direction to mobile devices. It's becoming more prevalent. You're doing everything on a mobile phone these days. I'm sure you guys sort of realise these things. Even another stat that's not on here, but I learnt the other day, is some people don't even search online by computers anymore. There's 20% of millennials actually only search online by their phones and their tablets. So which is sort of interesting. So we're definitely even moving further down that way. So I mean, how does that sort of go back, relate to hotels? So I mean, the challenges, I'm sure a lot of you will know these things, is trying to get loyalty from your customers, and you're trying to drive reservations to your own channels. So ETA commissions these days are 20%, and this has been happening for a while. This is why Marriott and Hyatt and these guys and Hilton have invested so much money in their systems, is to try and bring loyalty to their brand and reduce the commissions that they pay. So this is an ongoing trend. But what's sort of happened in the last 6 months with COVID is sort of been basically fast tracked what's been happening, because now there's other reasons to use mobile key. It's potentially labour cost savings, because I mean all the hoteliers now these days, their costs to run the hotel probably don't really change, but the revenue is decreasing. So to try and meet that profit level, there's going to have to be some cost savings made. And also there's the health reasons, the contactless. So it's sort of starting, it's fast tracked, it's becoming more, we're getting a lot more requests from many hotels, and to either implement the solution or tweak it. So it's definitely happening these days. And finally, like, one of the other things is the green initiatives. We're getting requests. We have been getting requests about wooden keys and recycled keys. But I mean, the best initiative for green is actually don't even use a key. So, and that's where the mobile key comes in again. So these are some of the challenges that we're trying to overcome here. Just a bit on the nuts and bolts now. It's obvious sort of how it works. At the moment, it's based on an app, which is Bluetooth BLE. Originally, the original plan was that it was going to be NFC for mobile key, but unfortunately, that wasn't really feasible for a few reasons. Number one, Apple didn't have it on their phones, and then secondly, trying to get agreements with all the telecommunications companies was proving extremely difficult. And in the US, AT&T wanted to charge $10 a key, which was ridiculous. So it sort of died. And then about 2014, Bluetooth or BLE became an option. And so we started with, well, I mean, as Abloy, we started with Starwood originally to do their original apps, and then it's sort of grown from there. I mean, just as a sidetrack back on NFC, it still may be an option in the future. So what I mean, other vendors may do the same, but from our point of view, we've still got NFC available if required, but it's still probably at this stage not as feasible, even though Apple do have it now. Mainly because there's sort of no links between NFC and the wallet on the phone for back into the property management systems and that sort of thing. But it's something to watch out for and be aware of, because it's NFC's got a lot of good traits, and it's something that we could use in the future. But at the moment, BLE is definitely the way to go, and it's based on mobile key apps. Another thing that's sort of come up during these COVID times is self-check-in and check-out. There was a bit of talk a few years ago whether self-check-in, check-out was feasible, or whether we should just go straight to mobile. But based on the airport experience, it seems to be that there's still a need for it. Not everyone has the right type of locking systems. There's different requirements. And there's certain things that kiosks can do that mobile keys sort of can't do. That looking at your bill and that sort of thing. It's a bit printing out receipts and things like that. So this is a typical sort of things that kiosks can do. They're touchscreen. They can scan ID validations. You can potentially have a camera if need be. Integrations with PMS and write keys, card payments. Card payments was always the difficult part, but there's a lot more integrations these days, making it a lot easier to handle those. And then why? I guess why should you use a kiosk? You can use the desk version or the old ATM type version. I mean, people are getting used to them. Woolworths is relying on them, and Coles these days. The airlines. But basically, it's upselling. A kiosk will also always upsell. You can't rely on a person on the front desk to do the upselling, but the kiosk will always do it. It's programmed in, and there's certain algorithms and things that they can the guys doing the systems can use to tailor the upsell if required. And I don't think these days the self-service is lack of service. I think people are expecting that they want speed. They don't want to wait around and to talk to people necessarily. To be honest, these days they want to just get in there and get in the room. So, and obviously there's a labour cost there as well, because typically a kiosk is about half the cost of a front desk person, and that you would pay a front desk person for a year. So, and then a kiosk will last years. So there's obviously that ROI there that can be provided. And then finally, again, due to COVID, is the contactless aspect, because the cards are inside the kiosk in a hopper. So there's no sort of touching of cards and things like that. I mean, moving on from kiosk, we'll move to more energy management, which was Heinrich sort of touched on. There's different reasons for energy management. I mean, there's a few there. In Australia, we have Section J. In the US, it's LEED. There's green credentials. There's obviously financial returns. There's integration, which again Heinrich mentioned previously. The comfort of the client and their expectations. Obviously, I mean, in certain places like Queensland, Northern Queensland, it could be like a humidity problem. So there's different reasons for doing it, but they're all valid. Again, and this is just to give you a background on roughly that this is part of in the US, but it's very similar in every hotel. I mean, heating and cooling make up over 50% of the energy cost in a hotel, so it's obviously to control them is going to provide savings. I mean, lighting is also there. It's 30%, but I'd say most of that lighting would be in the public areas, but there's still obviously a lighting cost in the rooms. So moving forward, how do you control these things? I mean, you can have guest room management systems controlling things. You've got key tags, you've got building management systems that control the whole lot. LEDs, which has obviously made a lot of savings in lighting systems, solar. There's all sorts of different things. So, I mean, what I'm concentrating more on here is more the guest room management system. And I get when I sort of talk to people about, I get a lot of questions about how they actually work, and people get sort of confused about, oh, is it the light's going to turn off in the middle of the night while we're sleeping, and is the aircon going to turn off, and that sort of thing. So what I want to do sort of here is just run you through the typical operational, just to give an understanding of how it works, and it's based on the principle of just in time, and just in time means enabling the energy consuming device just at the time that you need it, and then turning it off when you don't need it. And that's their basis around energy management. And that's where you'll make the savings, is just around this just in time principle. And I mean, I know this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I thought it would be handy to give people a bit of an idea on how it works. Because in these systems, the door lock or it can be a door switch is connected to the main room controller, which is kind of obviously controlling the air conditioning and the lighting. And then what will happen is, if you're on a fully integrated system, in this case, this is what this is showing. When the guest turns up, the room is in unsold mode. So on check-in, the room will automatically go to unoccupied and start, might do a welcome scene, might be, turning on some lights or air conditioning, depending on how far you want to go. And it'll already be preparing the room for the guest. And then once the guest gets to the room, they open the door and they close the door. And at that time, the system doesn't know whether they're in the room or they're out of the room. They don't really know, but it automatically activates the aircon and the lights just in case they came in. And it goes into this pending occupied period because it doesn't know, but it's on. It always fails to the side of the guest. And then the system is programmed for a time limit, which can be selectable by the hotel, how long it allows the motion sensor to detect the guest. If it doesn't detect them in this case, it'll turn off and go to unoccupied state. And in that unoccupied state, lights will be off, but it will be monitoring, it will be controlling the air conditioning to a point, but it'll be doing it in a way to make some savings. On this case, the guest opens the door again, room back into pending occupied, waiting for a detection from the motion. The motion is detected. And at that point, and this is the part that a lot of people always get confused about, what happens in this point? It doesn't actually really matter what the guest does from here. They can go and have a 3-hour shower or a bath or whatever. Nothing will turn off. Nothing will happen because they're in the room, and the motion's already confirmed they're in the room, and they haven't opened the door, so they must still be in the room. So nothing will happen. They could not move for hours and nothing will happen. It will stay on. It's only when, again, you open and close the door, then it goes to this pending occupied again, and it's waiting again for a signal from the motion sensor. If it doesn't, then it will go back to unoccupied. And if the door locks are integrated in with the system, we actually even know who's coming in. So if a staff comes in, we don't necessarily, in these cases, we don't necessarily have to activate the air conditioning to the same level as the guest. We can keep it to a more saving, a level that gives more savings. So that's also possible if required. And then at the end, when the guest checks out, it automatically puts the room back into unsold mode for extra savings. So I hope that sort of helps explain a bit about the concept, but it's not just in a hotel situation. It shouldn't really be based just on motion. It should also have some other integration. I thought I'd just, this is not so much of integration, but I thought it's something that people don't consider is minibars. You know, these days, obviously we want a silent minibar because we don't want the compressor on the minibars coming on in the middle of the night, waking guests up. And there's absorption versus silent compressor. They're both totally quiet. They run at about 30, 35 decibels, something like that, when they're running, depending on the brand. But the difference is, like, a silent compressor, while being told it uses a lot less energy to run than absorption. So it's about 50 to 75% less reduction. And for a 100-room hotel, that could be depending on how much you pay for energy. It could be $3,000 a year, which adds up over the time you purchase the minibars. You can also have minibars these days that set working periods. So at certain times of the day, say 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., more likely the guest has checked out, so and the door's not being opened, so there's no real need for the minibar to be operating at 100%. So you can tell the minibar between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., don't run as high cooling, and same between 5 p.m. and possibly 10. But it's really up to you, up to the hotelier. But there's certain other areas you can make savings. And then another option is also door position, monitoring that door position. And if this is more a labour saving, if the door isn't open, then if you integrate in with other systems, if the door isn't opened, you don't need to check it. So that's just another thing to consider. And then finally, just to sum up, here's a bit of an integration document on just showing about the things that you can integrate. Not showing that you necessarily should, but you can have an in-room controller, controlling everything, and that can, as you can see down the bottom there's the guest room, and inside the guest room you've got connections, to motion sensors, to the door locks, potentially to the minibar, like I just said. Another option would be connecting the system up to the D&D MUR panel, so that when the room is in D&D or MUR, signals can be sent to the housekeeping system, so that if it's in make up a room, they could prioritise that room for cleaning, or if it's D&D, they could know they don't have to go there. So it's more of a labour saving. They can focus, their time where they need to be. Obviously, there's power monitoring, and that's also we can even monitor power potentially on some systems, and controlling lights. Other integrations, like Heinrich said, is potentially televisions, and using the television to control the air conditioning and the lights, and potentially in-room tablets. And even to another extent, towards the top on the left, there's a backnet that's interfacing to the rooms, where the rooms interface into the building management system. So while the rooms are turning on the air conditioning, we can then the system can then send that information to the building management system, where the building management system then can control whether it needs to run the chillers at certain levels, so that which could create additional savings. And then obviously all that can be linked into the mobile apps. So from there's a lot of different integrations that may not all be applicable, but these are the types of things that you can do. From there, that's my part. So I hope that was helpful, and I'd like to introduce Brendon Granger to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Heinrich, for having me here today. Hi, everyone. My name's Brendon from Technology for Hotels. My part here today, I'm just going to do some education. There's nothing to sell, so you can put away your checkbooks if people still have checkbooks. I'm going to kick off with a quick video, which will take a second to start up. And I click the right button.
Open door.
Door open.
Radio on.
Playing radio.
And do lights.
Lights on.
Protein shake.
Making protein shake.
New York.
Loading New York. Set speed.
4.
4.
6.
6. 16.
4.
Error.
Okay, 16. 4.
4. Correction. 16.
Oh, everything. Good luck.
Up.
9, down.
Lights down.
Only 16. Only 16.
4.
And from one classic to another, this is Summer of '69.
69.
Hope you enjoyed that. For those of you who have got voice assistants, you'd appreciate some of the humour that we saw within that. So as I mentioned, my role here today is just to impart some knowledge. For those who don't know me, I've spent over 30 years in the industry, unfortunately. I've just worked out. And it was in preparing for this, I worked out that I started playing or using my first property management system 35 years ago. And it was at that point that I fell in love with technology. So today I want to talk about a couple of things. And the first one is how COVID is changing things. And Michael said this in his presentation. Literally, COVID is having it's allowing technology to be fast-tracked or accelerated. And we're doing this for two reasons: to meet guests' needs and also to allow hotels to do more with less. And as Michael said, it's really there'll be less staff. So we're looking towards technology to make sure that we can deliver the same level of guest service. And there are two technologies that come to mind, and Michael touched on both of them: mobile key and kiosks. They've been around for a number of years, but they just haven't gained the traction, that's needed. And it will be COVID that will actually accelerate those technologies. I think the other thing to consider is that, the guest behavior or their willingness to interact with technology has actually increased. At the same time, their desire to interact with people or devices that they don't know has actually decreased. And I think this is going to be a permanent change. I think Michael put it well when he said, using technology or allowing guests to do things themselves doesn't necessarily lessen the service levels as long as it's efficient. So I think permanently guests will be more attuned to using technology when they stay at hotels. The other thing we're seeing is that business models are changing. So software as a service has been the most common way to deliver software over the last couple of years. But I see vendors now looking at other models for room service ordering, etc. It might be a revenue share. It might be a fee based on occupancy. So rather than the initial capital expenditure, vendors are looking to be more flexible. When it comes to hardware, financing and leasing is becoming more common. The next thing I wanted to touch on is choosing the right technology and potentially some of the implications involved in not choosing the right technology. I don't need to tell you guys, you need to determine your needs and those of the guests. You should be creating a list of those needs. So there's a must-have, nice-to-have, and a wish list. There's two things that I see that I'd encourage you to avoid when putting that list together. The first one is personal bias. We all have them, and it's hard to differentiate, but I see it quite a lot. And just to give you an example, I hear from hoteliers, it's like, well, I don't use wireless charging, therefore I don't think my guests would use wireless charging, therefore I'm not looking at putting it in. We need to remove that personal bias from the equation and actually look at the number of people with phones that actually support wireless charging just as an example. The other thing is the tendency just to look for bright, shiny things. We all, as a geek, I do it. I get attracted to those bright, shiny things. Just because something is new doesn't mean it's necessarily better. So, as I said, you should put together a list of must-haves, nice-to-haves, and a wish list. Michael touched on it, and as did Heinrich. Look for an integrated solution wherever possible to save you time and money. I think Michael talked about, the doorbell solution, having a makeup room and do not disturb that's integrated with the housekeeping or guest request system. It obviously means that, it's more efficient from a housekeeping point of view. Rooms get delivered back to guests quicker as well. Reference checking your vendor is important. Obviously, you should evaluate the product and the vendor, but go out and actually find somebody who's currently using the product. Use your network. It's a big industry, but it's very close-knit. And I think we're starting to see, during the COVID, I'm pleased to say that people are reaching out and helping each other more than they ever have before. So reach out and speak to somebody who's currently using it. Ask them about the sales support that they got, what was the installation like, after sales support. What is the ability and willingness of the vendor to modify the product? And probably just as importantly, what is on the vendor's product roadmap? And if you're reference checking and you're talking to somebody like you would if you're reference checking a new employee, ask them that question. Given your time again, would you make the same decision and choose the same product and the same vendor? And listen carefully. If the technology you're looking at requires a change to the business process, then you need to implement a change program. All too often I see technology being implemented and the intention is to implement the technology. The staff don't adapt to it and eventually it will fall by the wayside. We're all change adverse and you need to implement a change program which normally involves incenting the staff to use that product. The last thing that I wanted to touch off here, and it's going to sound strange coming from a self-confessed technology geek, but not all problems are best handled with technology. I always say to people, you've got to offer the guest choice. You shouldn't just install something new and just say, look, that is the only solution now. You must place a room service order by using this new contactless solution. There are no other options. And probably the best example of this was it's a Sydney hotel going back many years. They installed an automated blind solution. And the only way that you could actually open or close the blinds was to turn on the TV. I think you had to go down to the fourth menu option called room automation, and you could open and close the blinds. There was no manual switch at the bedside. And because there was a little motor on the actual blinds, if you tried to force them open or closed, you actually broke the motor. You can imagine how many calls the hotel actually got in relation to that. Weekend guests calling up, asking, how do I work these blinds? And the hotel would have to explain. I remember talking to the general manager a couple of years after, and he agreed that, in hindsight, they would never do the same thing again. They would offer a guest choice. The last thing I wanted to talk about is short-term savings or the cost of inaction versus return on investment. We've all heard the term return on investment. The cost of inaction doesn't get used anywhere near as often. And I probably wanted to illustrate what I mean by cost of inaction with an example. So if I told you I could save you $100,000 a year, would you want to know more? I'm sure you would. So it was 6 years ago now. We were working with a hotel of about 400 rooms that was going through a major refurbishment. We actually put in an energy management solution into the mock-up room, but unfortunately it didn't make the final budget. And this is where we'll go on to explain the cost of that indecision or inaction. Just to run the numbers, the hotel at 400 rooms had a quarterly energy cost of about $200,000. So that's $800,000 a year. Michael mentioned that the heating and cooling in a hotel can be anywhere from sort of 60 to 40%. We chose a conservative 40%. So that means that $320,000 of the total annual cost of energy is related to heating and cooling. Any energy management system will save you 30% or reduce that cost by 30%, which is $96,000 a room. So who wouldn't want to save $96,000 a room? But as I mentioned, this property refurbished now 6 years ago. So over that 6-year period, that's $500,000 that has been lost because instead of putting an energy management solution in, they chose to put in some extra fluffy cushions or whatever, which unfortunately now are just a trap for COVID. Just to finish up, I'll just recap on what we looked at today. So we talked about integration, saving time and money. I think Heinrich mentioned, I was blown away by, the televisions that can save you $170 a day if you actually were to turn them off during certain periods. That's $60,000 a year. The other thing we talked about is the guest experience. Heinrich was talking about obviously streaming and things like that. Michael was talking about mobile key and kiosks. A guest now can pre-register and bypass the front desk using mobile key, or pre-register and collect a key from a kiosk. Touchless. It's becoming more common now for guests to be able to use their own device, which they know and trust, to do things like order room service and minibar. This actually decreased costs. So we're not printing menus anymore. Hotels are removing compendiums of the room. They cost quite a lot to print on an annual basis, if annually, not necessarily annually, but they cost a lot to print, and there's the binder, etc. It also, if you've got a digital solution, allows you to change that more frequently. So you can run a special at any time you want. You can take something off the menu. We also know that presenting the guest with a digital solution, it's more graphical, it's more enticing from the guest point of view. The guest can review the menu at leisure on their own device rather than talking to someone on the phone. What tends to happen is the solution can also upsell. So if I'm ordering your hamburger, the system might say, would you like to add avocado for an extra $2? Or would you like to upgrade from standard fries to curly fries? The end result is the guest spends more and we end up having a higher average check. And I've heard various numbers, but somewhere between 17 and 30% higher average spend has come as a result of using a digital solution. Excuse me. The other one we talked about was energy management. I think Michael touched on it, but any good energy management solution should be completely oblivious to the guest, and it shouldn't rely upon the guest to actually do anything. So, the old keycard solution where we were relying upon the guest removing the keycard when they left the room to control energy, that's just ineffective. And as I said, any good solution should be able to reduce your heating and cooling costs by 30%. So just in summing up, all of those, integration, guest experience, touchless technology, energy management, reduce costs and increase revenue, putting more into your back pocket. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help. And I'm going to hand back to Heinrich to wrap things up.
Thank you, Brendon. Thank you, Michael. It was some really interesting points that were covered here. The main thing I took out of today's seminar or webinar was the fact that we need to start asking the right questions. We need to take the personal likes and dislikes, as Brendon mentioned, out of the decision and see what is the best solution for the environment that we do operate in. As Michael also said, the guest should not be relied on because traditionally we know they will switch the systems on, leave it on, and they don't care because they feel they've paid for that room. So whatever energy is used or consumed, they've paid for that. And I think that's a big part of the operating budget in properties right now, which is totally overlooked. And even in the environment we operate in right now, people are still installing systems, but half of one, half of another, because there's personal likes and dislikes in the decision making, and they haven't vetted the solution properly. So for you as hotel vendors, operators, owners, consultants who's listening to this webinar, ensure that everybody asks the right question. And if you're not sure that's the right question has been asked, get a second opinion. Like Brendon said as well, that cost savings that that property could have had over the 5 years is real money. Okay? It's not in your bank account because somebody decided to have the fluffy pillow, and now the fluffy pillow is sitting in a storeroom because they've emptied out all the non-essential items in the room. We cannot see what the future holds in for our industry and where it's all going, but the decisions we make today could ensure that our property can keep the lights on for much longer and support the staff and the people that is in that business. Once again, thank you very much. Do reach out to myself, Michael, and Brendon online, LinkedIn, email. You've got all our details. And we hope to see you once again in the future. Thank you very much and have a nice day.